Last year, NZXT released the H7 lineup of cases in a bold move to bring focus back to what made them famous to start with, cases. Reception and feedback was good, and shortly after, the H5 made its appearance for those wanting something a bit smaller while still incorporating some pretty cool features like the ducted 120mm fan at the bottom. Well, for those wanting no compromises, room for tons of features and huge amounts of possibilities, NZXT have released this, the H9. But before we get into it, here's a quick word from this video's sponsor.
Yo dog, I heard you like RGB, so I put RGB on your RGB.
Thanks dog, but this is my show. Go back to pimp my ride. The new NZXT Kraken X63 RGB now with two 140mm RGB fans with an even larger infinity mirror display and new 7th gen Acoustics pump. And with a 6-year warranty, you've got nothing to worry about. Get your RGB on. Link in the description to find out more. Isn't that right?
So let me start by saying that the H9 was inevitable. With a case aimed at the mainstream market while also remaining fairly small, a case aimed at those wanting to fit in larger parts along with room for custom loop cooling, the next logical step is to, go big or go home. And that's kind of exactly what NZXT have done here. Also, I have to address the elephant in the room. NZXT have clearly taken inspiration from the Lian Li 011 dynamic, of which that clearly took influence from the Corsair 680X, and then there's the Hype Y60 and the Colink Unity Codex and the Asus TUF GT502. What I'm trying to get at is that no one owns the rights to this design of case, and I welcome more brands trying out new things because the H9 really does work well. First up, unlike the H7 series, it only comes in two flavours, the Flow, like we have here, and the Elite, which swaps out the airflow top for a glass panel for more of a showcase type look. Obviously, as I have the airflow here, I'll be focusing on that and kind of what it has to offer, as I feel that it's more than likely the one that people will go for. No matter what you go for, it's also available in matte black or matte white and comes with tinted glass on the black version, while the white comes with clear glass. So being a H9, it's a lot bigger than the H7, as the name would suggest, at 290mm wide, 495mm high, and 466mm deep, and weighs in at 12.1 kilo for the Flow, and then 13.1 for the Elite, due to the extra glass. One downside is that the H9, officially, only accepts up to ATX motherboards, but so did the H7, and yet, once we remove the cable tidy panel, eATX boards fit pretty easily. So ignore the specs, as the boundaries can be pushed, though it will sacrifice the style kind of ever so slightly. Now design-wise, it's amazing. If you're wanting to show off your system and make it the talking point of your setup, then both the Flow and the Elite will do that for you. Though the Elite will get you started a little quicker, as it comes with 3 F120 RGB Duo fans as standard, along with a single F120Q in the rear, while the Flow comes with the same F120Q in the rear, along with 3 more F120Q fans in the side of the case. Personally, I would have preferred NZXT to charge a little more and include 4 RGB Duo fans as standard in both models, because who is buying this and not wanting it to shine? Now, speaking of the price, you'll be quite surprised with the Flow coming in at $159 USD, while the Elite, due to the included RGB fans as well as the RGB and fan controller V2 coming included, will actually set you back a little more at $239.99, which, while they are both more expensive than the likes of the 011 Dynamic, they are also much cheaper than what Corsair have available in terms of the 7000D for instance, and come with the included fans. Now, the outside of the case is very clean with its kind of uninterrupted glass side panels, and with the Flow model having huge amounts of airflow along the top, as well as the complete right side panel, it gives a huge influx of air to the side mounted fan space that sits next to the motherboard, which is generally an issue with cases that prioritise glass over airflow. While the H9 seems to, strike the balance of both quite well, though we will look at exactly how the case performs in terms of thermals very, very soon. The H9 does have a dual chamber design, which again should aid in cable management as well as cooling, along with the ability of installing up to 10 fans, which can provide direct airflow to vital components, like the graphics card. Seems like NZXT have ticked all the right boxes. Now, for those wanting to go a little further, the H9 also supports up to 3 360mm radiators, and while there's no other I guess, specific or targeted custom loop features, installing a loop inside should be a lot easier than most cases due to how the front and the side panels come off to give full access to inside the case. Inside there's a somewhat unique feature which includes a semi-transparent panel that bounces any lighting from the side fan panel, along with giving you kind of a bit of a view of your memory, which if it's RGB, then great. It also kind of gives you a view of, any other components that may be around the area, and just ends up looking, I don't know, really nice. And it's just a bit of a weird feature to have, but it kind of works. Now, in terms of space, though the H9 doesn't officially support an eATX motherboard, the rest of the space has been utilised very well, with support for the largest CPU coolers at 165mm, along with GPUs up to 435mm in length. So an RTX 4090 would fit with tons of space for ventilation as well. Also, couple this in with the ability of using NZXT's vertical GPU mounting kit like we have done here, and you can really build a stylish setup that's functional as well. Now, due to the cable organisation bar that's in place, there really isn't much need for tons of cable routing options, though the bottom of the case does include some extra space for HD audio, USB and front panel header cables. There's also a large cutout for gaining access to the back of your motherboard, so changing your CPU cooler without the need to dismantle the complete system makes it a lot easier. But that's not really a standout feature anyway, because any case of, 2022, 2023 should have this as standard anyway. But yeah, it gives a little bit of extra access. At the top, of which the top panel does come away, it gives access to a large area, allowing you access directly to the top fan mounts. This is held in by a thumb screw and allows you to remove the bracket to install fans, AIOs or radiators easily, or simply to gain more access to the inside of the case. On the opposite side of the motherboard is a large area for cable management with around 91mm of space to tuck even the largest cables away, along with space for power supplies up to 200mm in length. For those still using 2.5 and 3.5 inch drives, there's space for 4+2 2.5 inch drives and 2 3.5 inch drives, which I kind of feel is plenty enough considering the way that the market is transitioning more towards M.2 drives as standard. Now, even with the drive bays populated, there's still plenty of room, which is what I've kind of grown to expect with NZXT, as they kind of aim their cases with the DIY PC builder in mind. And that's something that's been clear to see on the H5, H7, and now the H9 series of cases. Obviously, as NZXT have their BLD division of the business, kind of makes sense that building in their cases should be as easy and seamless for everyone. This is why there's also lots of Velcro straps, which when coupled with the SSD bracket, helps to keep cable management at bay. Also, due to the case having a big focus on airflow, as you'd expect, NZXT have gone pretty big on dust filters, with a slide-out filter that encompasses the bottom of the case, a dust filter for the top which comes as part of the top panel, and then a large full-sized mesh dust filter which sits within the right side panel and is easily removed for cleaning. So it all sounds pretty good, but we've seen a ton of cases over the years that tick all the right boxes on paper, but then under-deliver in terms of performance. But I'm pretty hopeful with the H9 because yes, it has a ton of glass, but it also has a ton of airflow too. Now, if you want to find out a little more on how we actually test cases, I'd definitely check out our case testing methodology video that explains things in a little bit more detail and what hardware we use for our testing as well. With that aside, let's see how it did. Starting with our Prime 95 Furmark torture test and taking a look at the CPU temperature, we can see that things get off to a little bit of a rocky start when looking at the idle temperature, as it gives us the worst result we've seen. Though, during load, the H9 flow sits within the mix of other cases, but does fall slightly short compared to both the H5 and H7 flow. The GPU temperature idle is on the higher end of the scale, being beaten only by the H5 flow, while at load it was at the upper end of our chart, but still within a reasonable limit of under 50 degrees, which during a Furmark run is still pretty impressive. The chipset temperature idle was around the middle when compared with other cases, while again the load temperature was near the top part of our chart. Based on experience, this could redeem itself in the acoustics, which we will look at shortly. Then when looking at the SSD, idle temperature showed nothing out of the ordinary, while again load temperature was in the upper quadrant of our results, though only with a degree or two separating most of the results anyway. While a simulated load can show worst case scenarios, when looking at gaming benchmarks we find the CPU temperature again sitting towards the top of our chart, only seeing an open air test bench and another NZXT case with worse results. The GPU comes in the middle of our stack at 46.5 degrees, showing that the H9 flow is more than enough to keep your GPU at bay during a pretty intensive gaming session, running a game like Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition. Also, during Metro Exodus, the chipset temperature came in as the hottest result we saw at 46.5 degrees, putting it 4% hotter than the NZXT H7 and well ahead of all the other cases we tested it against. Lastly, our SSD temperature during Metro Exodus saw again the NZXT H9 flow coming in towards the top of our chart, matching that of the Corsair 4000D Airflow, though still within a reasonable range that you'd expect. So I'll be honest, it's not looking great for the H9 flow, but typically with other NZXT cases that we've looked at in the past, we've seen somewhat similar results, but things are better in terms of noise. And that is exactly the case here. Here, the H9 flow comes out as the quietest case that we've tested at load. During idle, it was on the lower end of the scale, but at 37.7 decibels, it's nothing you'd notice anyway, while 41.6 decibels is an amazingly low reading during our Prime 95 Furmark simulated load test, which is always regarded as kind of worst case scenario anyway. So the results really do have me torn, and it's not really the first time that NZXT have put me in this position, because the H7 series was exactly the same. But generally speaking, I'm fine with it. You're always going to have a situation where acoustics and temperatures can be manipulated to suit an individual. Some would rather have a more aggressive fan curve that would allow for lower temperatures, while the downside would be more noise generated. For me personally, I think NZXT have done great here, as even though it topped our charts on occasion, and not in a good way, it was still within safe and reasonable limits, while also remaining pretty much dead silent. The beauty of seeing results like this means that you do actually have a choice to adjust the fan curve in favour of either getting more favourable temperatures or quieter operation. And obviously, as we test under the same circumstances for every case review, the onus is more on the fans as opposed to the case itself. Factoring in that this case can take up to 10 fans, of which, as you can see, 3 at the top, 3 down the side, 2 at the bottom because we ran out of 120mm fans, and then 1 in the rear, so we almost got there. But the fact that it can take up to 10 fans of varying sizes means that, much like when utilising a custom loop setup, you can turn all of the fans down low for a quieter setup, while also pushing bucket loads of airflow through to your system. I mean, can you hear it? No, not really. So yeah, performance aside, what do we think? The H9 is bigger than what most average gamers need. That goes without saying. But with the influx of cases on the market that are very similar, and the tried and tested O11 dynamic selling so well, it's easy to see that there is a market for this type of case. And little things that NZXT have done to make their stand out is very much welcome for me. Now, pricing wise, it's about where I expected it to be, though I would happily pay a little more in favour of having RGB duo fans on the Flow model, because it still has the same front and side glass panels that the Elite has, with the major difference being the glass at the top that really turns it into a showstopper. Maybe, I don't know, I'll even do a custom loop build in it soon, because that I think would look amazing. And changing some of these fans as well, because they are slightly different, but that's besides the point. So yeah, for now, what do you think of the H9? Is it too similar to the other, let's call them fish tank style cases that are on the market? Or do you welcome another case that incorporates that kind of wrap around glass design? I personally think it looks great. And having only a limited amount of time with it so far, I think over time, with a little bit of tweaking to the fan curve, and yeah, doing a custom loop, it could end up being even better. But what's next? A H11? It's going to be like out here that accepts even more stuff? Now that could be cool. I'm a bit of a sucker for super towers, so that could actually be pretty impressive if NZXT can pull it off. That about wraps up this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, then a like and a sub to the channel would be absolutely amazing. And if you love what we do, consider supporting us over on Patreon, where you'll get access to a ton of cool benefits, including a monthly Q&A live stream, exclusive behind the scenes content, and much, much more. The link for all that good stuff is down below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.